everybody. This is Teen Title Talk with Erin.
And Courtney.
This is the podcast
where two librarians discuss two YA books every 2 weeks.
Today we'll be talking about the books A Thousand Sisters by Elizabeth Wein.
Wein, I think.
I should have looked that up.
That's right. And Free Lunch by Rex Ogle. But before we do that, we have to talk about the upcoming literary awards.
Right. We're coming up right up on award season, which is kind of like an extended holiday season for the children's literature community. The last episode, we talked about the Michael L. Prince Award, who we thought was going to be a winner there.
Yeah.
We had a long list of people we thought were great. Well, books we thought were great.
Yeah.
That is an award given to a YA book of literary excellence from the American Library Association's YALSA division. And YALSA stands for the Young Adult Library Services Association. They do a lot of awards, including the YALSA Excellence in Nonfiction Award. And that is what we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, nonfiction.
Did you read any nonfiction books this year, Courtney?
Honestly, not a lot. I read this one, and then I think the only other one I read was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, but the manga. Because I can't even
Couldn't
be bothered.
even get through the whole thing. I know. So, that's
I would
tough.
say it was not thrilling or really all that life-changing. I still have just as much stuff, but it kind of was a fun read.
That's cool.
It's fine.
Yeah, I didn't do very well either. I think I read one YA nonfiction book, and it was Bygone Badass Broads, which was great, but it was from the previous year. That was by Mackenzie Lee, and I think I talked about it for this podcast. I remember sitting with Liz and talking about it. So that one obviously doesn't qualify. We need to do better this year.
Yes.
We have to...
We should do at least a couple more nonfiction shows.
Right. And I think maybe we have to find a way to better scout out like the best nonfiction that's coming out.
I agree.
Because I don't even know if I had many of these ones on our radar.
No, I know. It's hard to know like where to put the feelers. So many books get published every year.
Right. And we read reviews. So I guess maybe we'll just like highlight keying into that a little bit better. Does that seem good?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. But we should probably, because we failed so deeply in this level, let's talk about the ones that are on their list. There are 5 titles that are finalists. So what did we have on that list? Go ahead, Cor. You have the first.
Okay. So The Great Nijinsky, God of Dance by Lynn Curley. It sounds spectacular.
I saw the cover. It looked amazing.
It's about something I know literally nothing about, which is
that?
Russian ballet in the early 20th century. Vaslav Nijinsky was a dance prodigy who studied ballet and was discovered in 1909 by a famous art critic.
Wow.
Nijinsky's star burned extremely bright, but extremely brief. Did
he die early?
Yeah. He was the talk of the town between his incredible ballet skill and his scandalous social life. He was openly bisexual.
Sounds fantastic.
And includes a lot of visual treats, like beautiful illustrations, photographs, programs that enhance this concise biography.
Okay.
So it sounds really good.
I'd love to read that. I'm going to also make sure we have that at the library. I don't know if we do. I probably did order it, especially if it was getting great starred reviews and that kind of thing, but I should double check. There was also Torpedoed, the true story of the World War II sinking of the children's ship by Deborah Heiligman. This sounds incredible and incredibly devastating. It's a true story. It's World War II, and Britain is getting rained on by German bombs on a regular basis. Many parents selected to evacuate their children on the SS City of Benares, which was then torpedoed by a German submarine. This is the story of that incident.
Oh my gosh.
It's on my TBR pile. It actually just came in and was processed, so it's in my mailbox, and I'm going to start it this afternoon.
Oh, wow. Tell us how it is.
I will.
Okay, so another one is A Light in the Darkness by, A Light in the Darkness, I think you pronounce it Janusz Korczak. His Orphans and the Holocaust by Albert Marin. It's another World War II story.
We're hitting World War II.
This time the Warsaw Ghetto. It's about Dr. Janusz Korczak, who was an extremely influential doctor who honored children's lives, cared for their whole person, helped found orphanages where kids could be taken care of. But he was also Polish and Jewish in a time when that combination was essentially a death sentence. Throughout the book, Marin examines the doctor's life, beliefs, and his legacy. He also talks about life in the Warsaw Ghetto and the human stories of children who lived and died during that time. It has photos to enhance the story. It sounds like a doozy, but an important one.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Then we've got the two we've read. So I chose 1,000 Sisters, the Heroic Airwomen of the Soviet Union in World War II. And it chronicles the 3 regiments led by Marina Reskova. One of the regiments was the 588th, and they were called the Night Witches. This is an amazing story. It talks about so many difficulties and heroic acts and just amazing flying done by these women during World War II. And I couldn't really dial in on like, this is one character that I'm following the whole way. But it was just like, okay, now we're going to have a snapshot of this one and this one and this one and just see what they did and the challenges they faced. It was fantastic.
It sounds
And it
great.
did also have photos to go along with the stories and lots of informative little tidbits throughout. It was speckled with wonderful stuff and incredible sources. She had like a quarter of the book for her source citations.
Oh my gosh, right.
Such thorough research. An incredible book.
That's awesome. And I read Free Lunch by Rex Ogle this time, and that was also nominated. And it is a memoir by Rex about his life in 6th grade when he first has to go on the free lunch program. And it sort of documents really only a few months of his life. It's just that school year, essentially. Okay. And how his life kind of went through a lot of downs, some ups.
Not a lot of ups.
But living with abusive parents and in poverty.
Okay.
So, but it has such a personal, because it's a memoir, just a really like personal narrative style that it's just totally compulsively readable. You really feel for him. You really get excited when he has those ups, when he has those wins, and you just want to see him keep winning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about that in just a second. I did want to kind of frame our conversation because we were talking about how awards committees worked in our last one and kind of pretending we were, award committee people.
Yes.
And they often work from criteria. And I was looking up the criteria for the YALSA Excellence in Nonfiction Award. I couldn't find it on their website, but there was a school library journal article. Journals. I love journals. And it was actually Mark Aronson saying, what is the criteria for this? And then in the comments section, it was like, here's the criteria. I don't know if they I don't know if they publicly post it out there. I don't know. So anyway, weird. It was a little strange. It might just be hard to find. I'm not totally sure. But here's what we're looking for, what they are looking for.
Yeah.
Excellent narrative writing. Plot is well developed, strong characterization and character development, rich sense of time and place.
Yeah.
So that's, what we love about writing. Excellent descriptive writing, strong images depicted through vivid sensory details. Excellent expository writing, clear, readable language that communicates ideas and concepts effectively. Excellent persuasive writing, sound logic and reasoning, clear progression of ideas. Excellent book design. I just think of this as having the whole package, distinctive interaction between text and illustrations.
Yep.
Excellent organization. Obviously, you need that for people to understand what you're talking about. And excellent authority. And you kind of touched on this when you were talking about Rex Ogle.
Yeah.
He's obviously the authority on his life story. So using conventions of research and scholarship, if it's not a life story, the author transparently documents the accuracy of their sources and provides a trail for readers to further explore content, which I talked about.
Quarter of your book that is just dedicated to like a bibliography. There you go.
So that's kind of what they're looking for, I guess. And we're going to touch on a couple of those. So let's talk about Free Lunch. It's a memoir, which would lead me to believe that the narrative writing could be very rich and personal. How did the writing add up? Was it strong in terms of plot and character on that narrative category they're looking for? How was the voice? Was there room for it? Was it more informational?
I mean, it definitely was not informational. Like it doesn't read anything like a textbook or anything like that. It's extremely personal, definitely memoir, very authentic feeling. And I feel like it would be weird to be like, this person's memoir did not feel authentic. But I mean, I guess it can happen. This one did. And it really had, it takes place in 6th grade, and he has 6th grade cares, 6th grade worries. And it doesn't feel like the 6th grade Rex is wiser than he otherwise would be. You know what I mean? Which I think is
that's a strong narrative tone, I think, because it's placing it in the really as at the time period.
Right, because if you're writing about your life when you were a kid, it's hard probably not to put some of your adult knowledge into whatever you're writing, because you have learned so much more, or you know so much more. But it definitely felt authentically 6th grade.
And I would assume that because he knows the subject so well, like setting and the characters around him kind of were coming to life.
Yeah.
Is that true, or was that?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a couple of, there's not a lot of other kids.
Okay.
There are a lot of other kids
adults
in the periphery.
Yeah.
But only like 1 or 2 kids that he tries to like really fully flush out.
Okay.
And there are a couple of adults that loom very large in the story.
Gotcha.
Like his mom is hugely influential, not necessarily in a good way.
Right.
His stepdad, and there's this one particular teacher at school, and then there's the lunch lady at school.
Okay.
And so, he really limits like what could be a huge scope. He does a good job of limiting it to like, it's called free lunch, and it's really like why he ends up having to sign up for this program and sort of the effects it has on his own like self-esteem, on what he imagines other people think of him, and how he ends up coming to terms with it all. So I don't know. That was great.
Did he live in a place where a lot of kids had free lunch? Because I visit a lot of schools for Cliff that has like a large percentage of free lunch. Right. And I wonder if it would be easier almost if you're in with a huge pack of kids who have free lunch. Is that...
I think...
Or is it the switching from not having free lunch to having free lunch?
I think it's the switch.
Or is this the social stigma in the school about having free lunch? Well, it's like everything together?
I think he imagines that there's this big stigma because he is switching.
Gotcha.
From having regular lunch money to having like state-funded lunch.
Right.
Or federally funded lunch.
Okay.
And... at his school, his experience was you have to tell the lunch lady. Like, she doesn't know who you are. She
doesn't have a list?
She has a list, and you have to say, my name is Rex Ogle. I'm in the free lunch program. And he has to say it every single day. And so this is like...
That is...
he comes to dread it every single day.
Yeah, standing in that line.
And she always has to be like, and he's like, tries different ways. Like, he's whispering it. He's like, oh, I'm just right there. Like, he'll point to his name instead of saying it out loud.
But he has to say it out loud.
And she's like, what? Tell me louder. Or like, how come you're not saying what
anything
you need to say? And so it's like always... But the truth of the matter is, are other kids noticing? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
But it's his own experience. So we don't know if... lots of other kids were also getting free lunch. I mean, there are. He's on a list.
Right.
So there are other kids who get it. But the point is not, there are other kids who get free lunch too. The point is, it felt crappy that this was like what I'm doing.
Suddenly do this. Okay.
Yeah.
So how about book design? Did it feel whole? Was it just straight narrative from start to finish? Were there pictures? You mentioned that there weren't really pictures. Mine has pictures throughout. This might not lend itself to that kind of format at all.
Yeah, no, it was just straight narrative from start to finish. It worked well, though, in this context.
Yeah, I could see that.
The writing was really bold, really rich. He paints a picture that's really easy to imagine.
Okay.
You can see the empty apartment. You can see his little sleeping bag filled with cockroaches.
That's awful.
You can see it all. You don't need pictures.
Yeah. You also said that it should have good persuasive writing with a clear progression of ideas. Honestly, this really makes me think of the criteria for the SAT essay.
Yes.
But also persuasiveness and authority. The next criteria can sound very familiar when reading a nonfiction book. If you're being persuaded, you likely assume the person has authority. So I'm going to just assume that Rex sounded like the authority on his own life. Mm-hmm. Was there anything from his experience that took you by surprise, or something from reading his experience that you hadn't considered before?
Yes. It gave me more of an appreciation for the kinds of things my own friends were probably going through when I was in school. Mm-hmm. because these are things that, you know, kids don't really talk about a lot out loud to their peers. And I had a few friends who had difficult home lives, and I knew that things between us, or like if you were comparing us, I knew that things were different in our homes or our lives.
Right.
But I did not really appreciate how much different they might be. And, you know, we're all kids, so we all had kid concerns too, like homework or whatever. But they also had more grown-up concerns that I did not have.
Yeah.
Like, how can we pay for toilet paper this week? Or how will what will we eat once I eat this last can of SpaghettiOs?
Right.
Or, you know, what happens to my baby brother when I leave home? Will I leave them home with my abusive mom?
Right.
So
they are taking on a role that's more like an adult. Like, I have to protect and provide.
Right. And I think as a kid, and I didn't have those worries, like, I'm not even sure that I had the capacity to understand that they were worrying about grown-up worries. Like, I didn't even understand what grown-up worries
what that
were.
would be. Unless you're faced with it, you probably don't have that perspective.
Right. And I think those are all things that Rex Ogle really tries to illustrate in this book, that there's a balance between kid concerns and adult concerns that some children are forced to navigate a lot earlier than some of their other peers. And that Rex was signed up for the free lunch program was really embarrassing to him, mostly because his private life, the one that contained all his worries, his fears, and that was unpredictable, sometimes dangerous. I mean, his mom would leave him alone with his baby brother for 2 or 3 days at a time, or, you know, whatever. That was what was once something that he could conceal was now public.
Right. All isolated and saying, I am on the free lunch program.
Exactly. So like now people might know that he was poor. And if they knew that, like what else might they know about him? So I think the important takeaways are that these are things that kids right now in your school or in your child's school are currently dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they might even be your very best friends and you might not even know it. So I think it should be required reading, honestly.
Oh,
for
it sounds great.
6th grade and up, because I thought it was so great.
Interesting. So it's obviously we're talking about 2 very different books, and it, I think, is very different from the other ones on the list, which all seem to be talking about things in this historical context, and they're not really related necessarily personally to these stories. What do you think might be some of the challenges of comparing a memoir, this deeply personal story, to more informational texts where the person is curating information from historical records and stories? Do you think it's fair to have them in the same category? How would you even judge this?
I honestly don't think it's fair. I don't know. Think they should be in the same category. I think memoir, even separate from biography, I think memoir is its own thing. Like, the personal narrative, you know, is its own animal.
It completely is. This would be incredibly hard to judge. Because I'm saying, Elizabeth has all these source citations. She's got this deep research. Right. You can't say that about this story, but the heart, the personal story. Right.
Like, he is the author. Who's that guy who wrote that one? It was not a YA, but sort of recently. Was it Running with Scissors? The one...
Well, I think of Hey Kiddo by Jarrett Krasaska as kind of similar to what you're talking about. No, I'm thinking of
the one where it was like debunked. Like, they were like, it's not real enough to be considered nonfiction.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know.
So I can't remember which one it was. It was like on the Oprah book. He was like on Oprah.
Oh, okay. Whatever. And it was a big debacle.
It was a big debacle what ends up happening is sometimes when you try to get something written as fiction, they'll be like, well, this won't sell as fiction. But if it's kind of your life, you can turn it into a memoir and then it might sell better.
Interesting.
You know, so I think stylistically, fiction and memoir have a lot more in common.
They do. And it's a linear story, too.
Exactly. You get that feeling of character, of setting, of place, of voice. And sometimes what separates them is not very much, because if an author is writing from his or her or their own experience, and maybe they're just changing a few things to make it more exciting for fiction, then it's like, I don't know. They seem just closer to me. Not to say at all that this isn't a real story.
No.
But I just feel like stylistically it is closer. And so that's why I think it should really be
judged hard in its own
together. Especially because so many of them are written now that it just makes sense for me.
Yeah, and based on the criteria.
Would have its own
that's true.
Thing. And the criteria really speak to more almost like sort of traditional nonfiction books,
How's
like historical
setting, the story,
research, or you know, something like that. So I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it would come down to like, well, I loved this.
Well, I know.
And then you have to on the committee, because once you're comparing them, you're not gonna. I don't think you can compare them on the same criteria.
That's what I mean. I think they are separate. I think they should be different.
But I'd have to analyze the criteria really closely to
like
say that for sure.
YA Award for Excellence in Memoir.
I think that would be really cool. I think that would be a really cool award. They should do that.
Thank you. Okay, good. Let's do it. Get on it, YALSA.
All right.
Okay.
So is it going to win the gold?
I would love for it to win the gold. I think it's great. Like I said, I think it should be required reading. Like I think a whole school reading it would be awesome. Or even a whole town reading it. Like I think grown-ups need
maybe
to read
the whole
it too.
world. It could be the world read aloud.
World should read it because it is just one of those things. It's like life, and some people have the privilege of not having to think about that kind of life.
Right. Yep.
But that's a privilege, and you really,
got to pull back the curtain there a little bit.
Yeah. So
well, I'm glad it is out there, and I'm glad it's on the finalist list, and I'm interested to see where it lands.
Yeah, we'll find out.
All right.
So, but now we're going to talk about your nonfiction,
the Heroic Airwomen of the Soviet Union.
Exactly.
Let's talk about
which
them
is
in World War II.
Thing I have no idea about.
I had no idea.
So nonfiction sometimes scares people away because they think it's going to be boring or dry. So how do you choose which nonfiction books to read, and how does that tie in to the committee's criteria?
Okay. And so what I should say is I actually love reading nonfiction. I was surprised it wasn't on my list more this year. But usually I end up reading adult nonfiction, and I don't even know why. So for me, I think there's a distinct difference in terms of narrative nonfiction and straight up informational text, which I don't like. I quickly zone out with just informational text that has no narrative technique or character that I care about. So I usually base my nonfiction reads on things that I'm interested in, and that usually has to do with a time period, or even better, people of a certain time period or people in a certain circumstance.
Yeah.
If the writing's too dry, I'll bail. I especially am drawn to books that have investigative journalism elements. I love John Krakauer. I like Ron Johnson. I love his stuff. He wrote The Psychopath Test, and
I want to take the psychopath test.
We should.
Okay.
Maybe for our next jar of teen angst, Courtney. So if there's any type of mystery, I'm there for it. So obviously within criteria that we're talking about, I find that most of what I'm saying lines up with the first criteria about solid narrative writing. I want it to feel like a story that I'm interested in.
Yes.
And not be like,
And so, all right, this hopefully will tie in to my next question. So I also love when narrative kind of feels like fiction. It's a story, even though it's nonfiction. So it makes it really come to life. And I think that might be what the committee means when they're talking about excellent narrative writing. So did A Thousand Sisters have a narrative arc? Were the people in it well developed?
So I'm trying to think of narrative arc. It wasn't one character.
Oh, right.
It was very well done. It doesn't follow one woman. As you can see from the title, it's about 1,000 sisters. But that's what ties it together. It follows the story of this regiment. It takes you through terrifying battle scenes and night attacks where the pilots would fly totally blind. They don't know where the ground is. There were times when they would crash land because they couldn't tell how high they were off of the ground.
Oh, my gosh.
We hear firsthand accounts of being shot out of the air. She talks toward the end, they were talking about like this one, and I can't remember who was talking about it, but how scary it is when you see a plane being shot out of the air, because it starts to go up in flames, and then there's like people falling and plane parts falling, and it's just this mess falling to the ground.
All I can think of is that plane.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Out of the sky. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's scary. There were tons of near misses, heroic acts. It was incredible to think about, and I was very upset when a pilot was killed by enemy planes. Like, I really cared about this regiment, these people. There were tons of great stories that came out of this group, and I'm so glad that they're all in this one place. in this book.
Yeah.
They all are compiled here. And she does it in a linear way. She starts from like when the regiment first became a regiment. And she talks about Marina Raskova and her role in that through the end of their time together. There were pictures wrapped in, which I loved. There were side anecdotes about what the women were doing when they weren't flying. There were little informational pieces.
What were they doing when they weren't flying?
I mean, well, I'll talk about it in terms of like a picture. Is that one of your questions? Okay.
I also want to know if they got paid the same amount as men.
I can't remember. So there's an interesting thing where they talk about the United States versus the Soviet Union at that time. And the Soviet women had more rights.
And everyone's like the same.
And they had to like be prepared to fight. However, they still face distinct discrimination for showing that they could fly and showing that they were these amazing like flyers.
Interesting.
But not nearly as much as like American women weren't allowed to do the flying combat. And there were two, I think one of the last names was Harkness, that was trying to lead the charge in Britain and the US to get a regiment together. And they faced severe discrimination. Like there were flight bans when they had their period. There were, the male pilots put sugar in the engine or tank or whatever, it would explode the plane. Like it wasn't just funny, haha. It was like a dangerous thing to be doing. It was bad.
Men.
Can we get it together? But in both places, they didn't make women's. She talked a lot about like military wear and boots.
Yeah,
they'd have to wear men's boots, so they're like stuffing tissues into them. And now American troops even recently still had to wear men's troops. Yeah, give me a break.
I just read something about like women police officers who like the vests that they wear, the Kevlar vests, are designed for men. And so they don't fit properly.
How are you supposed to do your job well if you don't have the right tools for the job? Give me an effing break.
Right. And then it's like, well, they can't do the job. It's like, size 57 boots, friend.
That ticked me off. But anyway, did I answer your question or did we totally went on a tangent?
Well, it was a related tangent, but I'll get back to my.
All right, go ahead. Yes.
So, did it feel like the author had a point of view? So I think part of persuasiveness, because that's one of the criteria we were talking about earlier, is that like the author is more than just an authority. The author also has to have some kind of perspective on the topic, you know? And so was Elizabeth Wein's point of view obvious, or was it just total impartiality?
I don't think it was impartiality. I felt like the point of view was enthusiastic informant.
Okay.
So, like, she would be telling the story and you'd see these exclamation points popping up.
And then,
it was just like, you could tell she was enthusiastic about the subject, but she wasn't going to diverge from facts.
Okay, so she did not do what we just did.
Right. She was going to tell you the facts really clearly, talk about how the situation went down, but really enthusiastic. Like, she was excited about it. She was just excited to get in there and tell you this story.
I love that.
Even if it was just biographical information on a person, she was like, look at this and how this person did that. And she was citing her sources, as you can see.
Like, she pulled from everywhere. Tour for this book?
I don't know.
Meet her.
She lives in Scotland.
Oh, we might not meet her.
I don't know. I'll look though.
Okay. Well,
she might have already done it. I don't know which month it came out of the year, but yeah.
So I read that there are photographs, and you said there are photographs. So how well are these integrated into the text, and are there other illustrations like maps, primary sources, that kind of thing? There's
a long list of sources. There's informational tidbits about like radio versus radar and what the differences there are.
So like little call out.
Yeah.
Things.
And then there's also these pictures. I don't recall a map. So there are some lovely pictures of just like, there will be portraits and they look amazing with their medals and everything. And then there are things where it's like, oh, the regiment is taking a break or waiting to hear from something, and they'll have done like a dance. She speculated that maybe you wouldn't find that in the male regiments. And I don't know, maybe that's true. They would also do things that she did like focus for little moments on like, well, maybe this would be different for male regiments.
So
like
she does engage in a bit of speculation.
A little bit, where there's some speculation about like, the dancing, or maybe there was just no documents showing that men ever did dancing while they were waiting for I don't know. I'm thinking like Fred Astaire in there.
Exactly.
But also she does touch on like there are moments in their downtime when they would be hanging on to their more traditional femininity. So there was one where they were like sewing or something. Okay. There was a picture of one of them sewing and she'll touch on like that they wanted their hair longer or that they would put on some makeup. You know, there were these little moments of femininity, or they put flowers on their dashboard, which is like we're not going to go to war probably, but I feel really like that is important to keep the joy and like the hope. The humanness is important to hang on to. And while it might look different than the male troops, it's not any less. Yep. It's important. And so I really, the pictures were very well woven in. They were lovely. That's nice. It's like a nice addition. Yeah. And it puts the names to the faces because you are grappling with a lot of different people. That is helpful too. So it's more practical than just, too. Yeah, exactly. It's more than just, fun to see pictures. It's like useful. And that's important. So, what is it about this book that you think makes it stand out from other nonfiction you read before, or like what makes it award worthy? I think the extensive research, the narrative, especially the combat scenes and near misses were interesting. The pictures that were interlaced with the content felt like it brought together the whole package. So I'm thinking of it not just like it has these elements, but it's bringing together a whole package. There were also these, the little informative texts that added to the whole package. Elizabeth being who she is, which apparently she flies, or at least I saw pictures with her with planes. All right, so which made me think, because when I was reading the combat scenes, she used certain words of how they were flying. It felt like she knew what she was talking about. Like this lady has been there. Again, bringing the authority to the whole package. So she's kind of the perfect person to write this book. And that makes it stand out, obviously. So I don't know. It's got so many elements. Now, I can't stand it up next to the others because I didn't read them yet. Right. So I can't say, I think it was more the whole package than these. But I do think it is an amazing book. And I'm glad it's on the finalist list. And I hope people read it. Good. It's also about that little pocket of history that you might not necessarily seek out. I love that. I love that, too. Just like something you never even would have thought to wonder about. And then someone did this deep dive into it. I love that. It was great. That's cool. So we'll be heading out of award season as we come off New Year's hiatus. If you want to tune into the Youth Media Awards, which I do think you should, those are January 27th at 8 a.m. If you just Google Youth Media Awards announcements, you'll go to their page and they live stream it right there. And you can watch as they give the awards out. And you'll get to see if we were right about anything. Right. They're like, nope, none of these books. And I'm really still gunning for Lovely War for the Prince. Just saying. I think you might. I don't know. You just never know. You never knew who the committee is. And plus, there were so many great books, and we didn't read all of them. We did not. But we're going to go out. We're going to revisit our jar of teen angst next time, and we're going to be reading fantasy. So I'm going to read Melissa Albert's follow-up to Hazelwood. It's called The Night Country, and it just came out. Ooh, and I'm going to be reading Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez. That sounds amazing. Listeners, please feel free to touch base and let us know what great books you read this year. Have you read any of the nonfiction finalists? Which one do you think will take the big prize? Also, as I said, our Jar of Teen Angst will be back next time, so please send along any questions about our past teen selves or tell us your own stories. You can do that at teentitletalk@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us for Teen Title Talk. This podcast is brought to you by the Derry Public Library and Derry-CAM, Derry Community Access Media, empowering independent voices. Listeners, your support means so much to us, so don't forget to rate, review, leave us your thoughts. Our theme was created and performed by Banded Starling. Until next time. Bye. Bye.